Time keeps on leaving and we keep on moving. When do we pass on our wisdom to the youth? My veteran story, lost arts discussions, fireside chats with a bourbon or two. It's time to hear the stories by our military veterans. Get yourself ready. It's the Lost Arts Podcast. The Lost Arts with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast. That podcast has given a voice to our veterans. On today's episode, we're going to have a fireside chat. We're having a fireside chat with Daniel Cano, and he's going to be coming on and telling us a little bit about his organization and his business that he has going on. It is an incredible thing helping out veterans, so I'm very excited to get his message out for everyone to hear it. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying the podcast here, I consider becoming a patron. That's a monthly donation that you can give to help with the cost of doing this podcast and getting everyone's voices out, for the veterans' voices out for everyone to hear. And if you don't want to do a reoccurring monthly thing, you could do a one-time donation. If you get on the link, you can go down, hit the one-time donation, and anything that you give is much appreciated. And then if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you can email me at thelostartwithandrewcox@gmail.com. Again, that's thelostartwithandrewcox@gmail.com. And of course, like always, we do have some stuff that you can purchase. We have cups, we have mugs, we got hats, we got shirts, we got all kinds of stuff that has the Lost Art stuff on it. That way, if you want to go out and support us and walking around town and people see it, you can kind of spread the message about getting our veteran voices out. All right, with that, we're going to welcome the founder of Heroes Haven. That's a business that Daniel has. It's property investments where he houses homeless veterans. So that's kind of a stepping stone. But I don't want to tell too much about it. I'd rather get with Daniel and have him talk about it. So, Daniel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm very excited to hear about this, and I definitely want to get your message out there because what you're doing is something fantastic. It's incredible. But let's kind of start at the beginning. Like, where did the idea come from, and kind of walk us through some of your business doings that you got going on there.
Sure. Well, 3 years ago, we're like caught up in COVID, right? So there's a lot of staying at home. And at the time I was working as a government employee for the Air Force. I'm a 20-year retired vet, Air Force. And then from there, I transitioned into working for the government in, different ways, contractor, civilian, then contractor, then back to civilian.
Right.
But at that time, it's like, hey, everybody's got to go home, and we were splitting our times and doing all those type of things. And there's only so much training that you can do, computer training, that you can do, right?
Very true.
You got that certificate. And so in my downtime, I was looking at things that interest me, like real estate, right? Just kind of a lofty idea. Oh, maybe someday I'll do this. Maybe someday I'll be a property investor. That type of stuff. And during the end of COVID, if you will, I started to go through a transition in my life. I was going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So my real estate agent is my first roommate in the Air Force back in 1989 here in San Antonio. And one day we went out to kind of just talk about, like, he had helped me buy my home here in San Antonio, a sight unseen, when I was living up in the DC area, Northern Virginia, when I moved to San Antonio, and he helped me sell that home. And now I'm looking for a new home, right? And
right.
He asked me, we were out just hanging out. He asked me something that really changed the direction of my life. It was always kind of there. I always had something inside, but he asked me, he said, if you could do anything, what would you do? Like, what would you do? And I said, if I could figure out a way to house myself, clothe myself, have a life, and give back to our veteran community, like, that's what I would do. If I could figure out a way to make the focus of my life is giving back to our community, our veteran community, that's what I would do. But I had no idea how I would do it. The idea was just, you maybe just figure out a way to volunteer or do something. That's what I was really kind of thinking. That evolved to, well, when I buy my house, my new house, maybe I'll buy a mother-in-law house in the back, like buy a property that has a mother-in-law house in the back, and I'll live in that house and do something with the main house, or I'll do something with the mother-in-law house where I can give back to community. And at that time, I started to really think about homeless and our veterans.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
one day he walked up to me and he's like, "Hey, I've got these 4 homes, basically 2 duplexes that I think would be a perfect fit for what you're trying to do with the veterans." And I'm like, "Well, I don't have it like that. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. I can't do that." And I was like,
Yeah,
smaller scale. He's like, "I don't know. You might want to look at that." And so the more I looked at it, the more it made sense. I storyboarded. I do a lot of time storyboarding stuff. How does it work? Am I just telling myself this is a good idea? What's the proof of concept? All that kind of stuff. So the more I looked at it, the more I was like, you know what? This can happen. This can really happen.
right,
I started putting little stickies up on my desk. I was still working for the government at the time. Little stickies on all the little things that you want to do to include the name and how it's going to work. I mean, the layout, the whole deal. So I met with the builder because it was still kind of foundation and some, they hadn't really finished. They hadn't finished at all. Uh, and working with them a little bit to say, hey, this is what I really need, I think would work. And it just kept kind of going from there to the point where I was like, okay, this is something that really means a lot to me. Am I going to be able to deal with the things that are happening at my job, working for the government, and be able to truly focus in on what I'm trying to do here with Heroes Haven? And it came down to it. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to fail at 2 fronts, right? I won't
right.
be
Yeah,
able to do what I need to do, my government job and for my guys, and I won't be able to do what I need to do over here. So I just kind of did a leap of faith, and people were calling me crazy, and that's true. I am a little bit. I resemble that remark, people,
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? So the thing was, okay, how do we do proof of concept? Like I was saying before, you tell yourself this is something good, but if you keep telling yourself that, but you really, is it based on reality? Is there true value to not just the veterans, but the marketplace? Because you can have a great idea, and then next thing you know, 3 months you're out of business because you can't sustain yourself.
Right,
And so once I kind of got a hold of what I need to get my arms around, what it is that would help sustain or would be required to sustain it, then I took what they call deferred retirement from my government job, made sure they were good there with a new replacement, and then I just went full in.
wow. And so at that point, you purchased the property there in San Antonio,
That's correct.
and that in that property, you have how many rooms available that you can help veterans with?
So it's 12 rooms, but I live the same way that the veterans that live on the property live. So I have a room to myself. So I share a kitchen. The veterans share a kitchen, common areas, bathroom, right?
Right,
So I live the same way, and that was important to me because again, it's part of that. You tell yourself that something works. Yeah, this would be great. It'll work, but unless you actually put yourself through it, you won't understand why things may not be working out, right? Or why things are working out. Because that's another thing for me is like, man, that went really well. Well, why did that go really well? There's elements there that if you're not understanding why they went well, then when things start going sideways, you may not understand why, right?
yeah, absolutely.
A whole bunch of different factors in there. So there's 4 homes here in San Antonio on the same property, 2 duplexes. and there's 12 rooms. I take one room for myself, and I have 11 veterans living in the other rooms. And the way that I uh, primarily get veterans is through the nonprofit networks here in San Antonio. And I also have a property in El Paso, which is a single family home, 4 bedrooms. I take one of the rooms, and the other three are available to the veterans. So nonprofits contact me, say, hey, we got a guy we think would be a great fit, and basically meet the individual. I'm brutally honest about the environment here, right?
Right.
If
Yeah.
you're not a good fit, I don't want to, I don't want you thinking everything's rainbows and sunshine and the whole deal. And then you get here and it's like you just can't get along with other individuals. So you really have to be able to not just live with other people, but also have a a focus on where you want to go. Like you were homeless, you lived in a shelter, you're coming onto this property. I'm not a halfway home. I'm not a program. I'm not a nonprofit. I'm a landlord with a focus on giving back to our needy veterans. So individuals have to have some sense of where do they go next, right? But
Yeah.
if they don't have that, they end up in this really, it's kind of it's 3 years now that we've been doing what we're doing, but it's interesting because it kind of goes like this. Like they hit rock bottom, right? And they're on the streets, and
Hmm.
some of them have been there for years, decades, right? And then they finally get to a place where they go, you know what, I need to make a difference. So this is just, and a lot of it honestly is age, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
certain things when you're younger, but now that you're getting a little older, it's like, look, you know what? This really isn't working out. So they start to kind of like they start to folk like their deal is get off the sidewalk, get off the bench, right?
Right. Yeah.
Get out of the shelter, right? And then they come here and then they're like, okay, I'm off the streets, I'm out of the shelter, I'm able to sustain myself. You know what? Let's just relax a little bit. And then boom,
Yeah.
they
Yeah. Yeah.
right out. Because they didn't have anywhere else to go from there. They told them so. Hey, I made it.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with enjoying ourselves a little bit more? And next thing you know, they're involved in the things they were involved in before. So a big part of what I call success. My success is not how many veterans come to stay on the property. My success is measured by how many people become productive members of our community. And some of them end up giving back to community, which is the ultimate, for me, like the ultimate success.
Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
like a force multiplier.
Hmm. So, so you're kind of that stepping stone, if you will, right? So the way we kind of talked about it before, but so you're on the street, they want to do something better. So it's if they don't have the desire to do better, then they're not going to work toward that. So you're kind of that stepping stone and give them kind of a place to be and a place to grow, and then they move on to a place on their own somewhere, or with someone else, with a job and those types of things. And correct me if I'm wrong. That's kind of the stepping stone aspect of what you're talking about.
Sort of. Yes, that is definitely a path that they can go to, and we've had several people that go that. But it's not the only path. And
Okay.
that's the other part of this that is like a learning experience for me is you believe you know something. It goes back to what I was saying before, proof of concept. You tell yourself you understand something, you know something, but it isn't until you get in there and start really getting your hands dirty that you realize that success is measured in different ways. For me, the idea was, hey, why wouldn't somebody just want to live on their own, have their own place?
Right.
Well, I'm not an expert at all, and I'm learning as I go. But whether we're talking about homeless people or we're talking about other challenges, the human condition, if you will, mental health is the the long pole in the tent, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so for an individual who is struggling mentally to be put in an apartment, let's just say, on by themselves,
Mm-hmm.
where they really don't see anybody, they don't do and maybe somebody comes out to visit them, maybe they don't. That is the worst thing that can happen to them. It sounds like the best thing because all of their needs are being taken care of, which again, remember the curve, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Now I'm
absolutely.
at a place. Now I'm at a place. I don't need anything anymore. I've made it. Bam. So some of the individuals that have come to stay on this property who could very easily move on and have their own apartment, they're amazing tenants, have elected to stay, right?
Right.
Like who wants to stay where you've got to like you have a housemate? Well, the right housemates, they help each other out, right? Like I was saying years ago, when I didn't really understand it, but I could start to feel it, is that some people kind of feel like they're back in a unit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And they
I
remember
definitely, yeah, that's a huge thing for veterans. Like, you that they miss that camaraderie or those
that.
types of things. And what you have going on there is perfect for that.
So it's something that is almost counterintuitive to somebody who hasn't served, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I would never want to do that. It's like, well, military individuals are doing things that many would not do,
Hmm.
right? Just the
Yeah.
fact that you're signing up, right? What are you signing up for? How does that work? Why would you do that? You know, I remember, when I was somebody pointed this out, which I never really thought about. That's why I love to have conversations with people because it helps you have a better understanding of what you thought you understood, but then they come at you at a certain place. So somebody that sort of knew me, or at least had an understanding of who I was when I was younger, said, "You're the last person I would ever imagine joining the military because you hate people telling you what to do."
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, and that's all that is people telling you what to do, right? Or at least you believe that. And so I'm like, that's a good point. That's like, but I had this other thing that was happening with me about joining the service that trumped that, right? So when somebody joins the military, and there's as we all know, even within each service, there's a whole bunch of different people, you know what I'm saying, and how they handle and how they manage themselves within the service that they provide in the military. It's all different walks. But there are some things that are common, right?
Very
Whether
true.
they're like gung ho, this, whatever it might be, or hey, I'm here for school, or I'm here for the opportunity, or I'm just trying to get out of my situation, or whatever it might be, at least by the time you get through either your boot camp or your basic training or whatever it is that you're going through, you start to get a bond going, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So now what you thought you knew, you now have a different perspective. And so when you look at that, to the veterans that are out in living in the streets, they didn't get on the streets for nothing. I mean, something happened that caused these individuals to end up on the street. And everybody's got a different story, and our vets have been telling the story about how they got on the street over and over and over and over again. So they know how to cut this part out, bring this part in, bring
Yeah,
whatever it might be.
very
And
true.
and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's what ends up happening. So by the time you come up and go, hey man, what's going on with you? They've got it. They've got that thing. So to break through that and say, okay, how do we not change, but how do we focus in on the part that they admit is the reason why they end up on the street, and how do we keep ourselves from going down that path again? And
Yeah,
are they ready for it? Because like
true.
I said, not everybody's ready for the help. They all say they're ready for the help, right? And help comes in different forms. You know what I'm saying? But are they ready for the help? And for the folks that are ready for the type of help that we're offering here. And the help is, I'm gonna help you help yourself. But if you're not gonna help yourself, then you're cutting me off at the knees. There's not much I can do, right?
Very true. Yeah.
So how do I create an environment where people are more up for helping themselves and not in a taking advantage way, even though I do want them to take advantage of the opportunity, but not in the taking advantage where I saw this somewhere on some YouTube or something where people are stepping over, dollars to get the pennies. Like
Right.
how do you how do you stay focused in what you need to do so that you can then get to the greater things that you're looking for? You know what I'm saying? So, for example, people say, how do you do it? How do you have a lease that has house rules, but you don't have anything that is like curfews, stuff like that, like a halfway home or something like that,
Right. Yeah.
chores. Like how does the trash get taken out? You know what I'm saying? Like
Hmm.
how does that happen? How do the things that you think you have to force people to do, when people start to understand that this is not just housing, this is an opportunity for you to get to another goal, even if your goal is to stabilize yourself here, right? Then somebody ate my ice cream doesn't matter so much, right? So,
Right. Yeah.
you know, somebody used my favorite coffee cup, or somebody ate one of my hot pockets, or whatever it might be, which is important for individuals, right? Because in their mind, that's like critical. But when we're able to go beyond that and go, what's more important, hot pocket, or you getting to whatever it is that you want to get to? Would you give away that for a hot pocket? Hell no, I wouldn't give that away.
Yeah. Very
Okay,
good
then
point.
let's focus on that. You know what I'm saying? Let's focus on what that means. And how do we keep people from your hot pockets? You know what I'm saying? So okay,
Right. Yeah.
that's a real thing. You buy your hot pockets, and now all of a sudden you come back, and you had five, and now you have three or four.
Mhm. Right.
Like, hey, okay, so what do we need to do? All right, well, how do we focus on getting you a mini fridge? And many of my tenants have mini fridge, some of them that I purchased myself. So I'm not to kind of help with that. You know what I'm saying? As an
Yeah.
example, that's just one way of like dealing with a real issue, instead of just say, and you think it's not a real issue, but it is a real issue, because again, mental health is a big part of people's success, or being able to manage their mental health.
Yeah.
um and so when I look at a challenge like that, I don't look at it as an insignificant thing, right?
Mhm.
I look at it and say, okay, something needs to be done. But one of the things that I do is I say, look, you got to handle that with your housemate. Well, you go talk to him. I said, yeah, I can go talk to him. I can, but you need to handle that with your housemate. And then
Yeah.
the housemate will be like, hey, man, Steve, Brian, whatever it might be, you guys need to get together and talk about this. Got to tell them whenever they come in, it's almost like it's almost like a briefing, right? Like, hey, I go, look, there's going to be things that happen in the house that if you need me to get involved, I will definitely get involved, but you really should resolve it within the house. Because if you don't, I'll come in and resolve it. But the way I resolve it may not be the way you want it to be resolved. Right.
Yeah. That to me is right along with what we do in the military in general. So, and you tell, your junior soldiers, sailors, whatever, you tell them, hey, you guys need to work this out. If I have to come work it out, it ain't going to be a pleasant experience. So just
Right.
work it out. And we learn that over time. And I think they can relate to that, which,
Absolutely. So that's, when people ask me about like what's the secret sauce, like people have never been in the military and they kind of look at the setup and they go, well, I want to do that. I go, okay, I can give you the formula, if you will, for buy a property. This is how much you want to buy it for. This is how much you have to rent the rooms for, the business side of the house, if you want to call it that. But if you're not able, if you want to do the housing veterans type thing, if
mhm,
you're not able to connect with the veterans, you I'm not saying you can't do it. I'm just saying I think it would be incredibly difficult because there's an element there that you're just going to be banging your head up against the wall going, I don't understand. Because our veterans understand what you just explained, it's not a bad thing for them. They don't, none of them go, well, that's unfair. Well, none of them say that, right? They all like, yep, dress right, dress. Heck yeah. That's what, that's it, right?
Yeah.
So later on, when it becomes a question or there's a situation, and all these situations can go different directions. I mean, it isn't a cookie cutter type thing where we just resolve everything like that. I mean, there's tons of I don't know what you call it. It's just a lot of tapping into people's ability to resolve their own issues. And when you do that, my opinion is that when you help people resolve their own issues, then they're better able to deal with other things that come along that are somewhat unfair or unseen, right?
Hmm.
One of the things that my property manager, the person that helps take care of the property here in San Antonio, his name's Andre, amazing individual. I'm so blessed to have had him be a part of this journey. He was somebody that came from this, living in the streets. I believe he was in a shelter, 99% sure he was in a shelter, and then came to me, the nonprofits say, came to me and say, hey, he's got kind of a spotty background. Who doesn't, coming
Right.
from
Yeah.
some more than others. And but I've worked with the nonprofits so much that I believe that they're like, you know what, this place is a place where people really have an opportunity to get back on their feet because the landlord is invested, right?
Yeah.
He's not just collecting checks or payments or whatever it might be. And so Andre came, he just showed me that he had stabilized himself. Whatever it is that he had gone through before seemed to be in his past, but still, for me, it's like everybody has a great idea when they first get here. Oh, this is such, and we could do this and we could do that. I'm like, number one is stabilize. Just stabilize yourself. Don't
Right. Yeah.
don't put all that other stuff on yourself. Just stabilize yourself and show that you can get a job, keep a job, get along with your housemates, know how to do conflict resolution, do those type of things. I'll sit down and talk to you all you want about what you might want to do, but stabilize yourself first. And if there's something that I can do to help you with that, I will. Again, I'm not a counselor and I'm not a nonprofit, right? I'm a landlord, if you will. But I've got a true, somebody said this to me that you got to have a calling. I go, I guess that's what you would call it, a calling, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so he ends up stabilizing himself. Then he gets picked up to get his own place. So there's this thing called the Veterans Association, VASH. I think it's subsidized housing, VA subsidized housing. It's the same thing as like Section 8, but for veterans, if I understand it correctly. I'm still learning a lot of these different programs. I work with them, and I'm trying to get my arms around as much of the information. Sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm always learning. So initially, he didn't want to leave because he liked being here,
Hmm.
and he was helping me out around the property. Just a great guy. Was a captain in the Marines, right? And it just goes to show you we got all different types here, all different types. You know what I'm saying? The situation could hit anybody. Ultimately, I was half joking with him. I said, "Well, you need to take that voucher and get your own apartment, or I'm gonna kick you out. I mean, that's just the way it works. You got to go."
Yeah.
But but he's like, "Well, I like coming here. I like doing what I'm doing." He volunteers at the shelters. He does a lot of great work in the community. I said, "Well, we can still keep that going. We can still keep that going. You get your own place, and we'll figure out how you're gonna best support us here." And so that we've been able to do that, and he's been with me the whole time. So just a blessing to have that individual be a part of what we do here. Anytime that I can have the veterans that are here who have shown that they can stabilize themselves, because I don't want to be like rainbows and sunshine and everything's great, but the person isn't able to handle like some additional responsibility. Everybody says they want to handle additional responsibility, but I learned early on that it's just not you're just not capable, at least not at that time, right?
Right.
Um, but anytime I can get somebody on the property to do work for me, if you will, they get paid, and I'd like doing it legit, right? I need an invoice, I need a so that they it's not like you're doing me a favor, I'm doing you a favor. Let's do something for real, right? So from the design of my logo to I got a shed in the back that I'm turning into a like a tiny home type thing, and I had one of
Right.
my previous tenants who had moved on and was doing construction to just a whole bunch of different things. You know, if I can get them involved and show them that they have value in the market, right?
Hmm.
Not just value in the community, but value in the market. Because at the end of the day, if the market doesn't value what you do, then it doesn't matter. Everybody has this great idea about how amazingly talented they are. But how do you bring that to the market where the market goes, you know what? Yeah, that's pretty great. Or is it just nobody recognizes my talents? It's like, okay, we can say that if we want, but we gotta figure something out. So
Yeah, and I think that's a great thing that you got going on there. So you talked about the mental health aspect of things, and you know obviously you're not there to do those types of things necessarily, but I'm assuming they're working those types of issues through the VA or other like you know other charity works or something of that nature. Is that kind of how you run that aspect of things?
so because I'm a landlord, right? I I found this out as well early on. Like not the mental health, even though there was a mental health part to the situation where the police came and and I'm like showing up at the police station, hey, I'm the landlord for such and such, and this is what I do. What happened? It's like, whoa, time out. You're a landlord. You don't you don't get to come in and just thank you for what you do, but you're not you know, I'm like, oh, that's true. That's right. I'm not that guy. So what I do is less invasive, right? Because I really don't have that privilege of finding out what those things are. I'm more like, if I see something, I'm going to say something. And if you need the help or you're willing to get the help, then I'll point you in the right direction, or I'll pick up the phone, or I'll call somebody and say, hey, this person is looking for this type of assistance, and then try to set something up. But at the end of the day, that's between that individual and
Yeah.
whomever else is out there, right? The nonprofits have many, many, many programs that can be used, but it is a challenge because the individuals that do get the mental health, let's say they get a prescription for something or another,
Mhm.
and then you can kind of tell when people feel pretty good. They don't need the prescription and they don't need the medication,
Yeah,
right?
and then it drops off. Yeah.
And so when I'm talking to individuals that are on medication and I can see that they're a little off, and I'm like, okay, is this the right time to be having this conversation? Because they're not really picking up on what's being said. They're in another place.
Hmm.
And but sometimes I can't wait. Like, what is the forcing function for them to get that assistance, right? So one of the things that I tell the guys that come in is like, look, and they're like, oh, thank you, Mr. Cano, Mr. Dan, or whatever it is that they decide to call me, and you do such a great thing here, and you're such a nice guy. I am not a nice guy. People who know me, the people who know me know I'm not a nice guy. I'm trying to be a good guy. I'm trying to work on those, because I've got challenges. We all have challenges, and
Oh,
that's another
absolutely. Yeah.
thing, guys. And they're like, well, I'm not sitting here right now saying I've got it all figured out, and now I'm just on top, looking down and saying, wouldn't you like? No, man, I got challenges. I've got a lot of things that I deal with on the daily. And so we all have these challenges, but I could it's like, so how do I what's the forcing function? And that's where it comes into like this is what you did. So it sounds familiar, right? It's all our training, right? This is what you did, this was the effect, and this is what's going to happen if you do it again.
Right.
And this is what's going to happen if you do it again. I've kind of managed to work myself into a place. I don't want to give up all my secrets. They're not really secrets, but all right, Steve, Bob, whomever, what's going to happen if this happens again? You tell me. Now they put on their hats like when they were supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
What would I do if this was to happen again? And then I either agree with it, modify it, or I just don't agree with it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then leave that conversation. It wasn't my solution, it was really your solution. And all I'm asking you to do is stay true to your solution.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, there you go. And if it doesn't work and they have to leave, 9 times out of 10, they're leaving going, I know, I know, I know. Well, maybe you need to go get some help that maybe it's just a little too comfortable for you here and you're not able to get it. So at the end of the day, it's not about having that warm fuzzy for me that somebody is staying on property and they're not sleeping in the street. I've got so many different stories, Andrew, on stuff that just broke my heart to have to do, but I had to do it, you know.
Right.
Example is I had an amazing individual, huge mental challenges, but amazing individual, older gentleman. This dude could have been a movie star, man. He just had that look. When he's cleaned up, he just had that look. You know, Used to probably be a giant of a man, but now he's a little more frail, whatever it might be, but got a great personality, just great, 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 great guy. But he just couldn't get away from the I wouldn't call them demons, but from this reoccurring pattern in his life. And so he's and he was one of my first tenants. So he has the units, if you will, the duplex was built in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
And so he came in towards the end of 2021, had a beautiful room. The whole place was new, right? But he would live in his room the way that he would live on the street.
Right. Yeah.
What he explained to me was he lives worse in his room than he lives in the street,
Wow.
because in the street everybody can see his business and he's too embarrassed to live that way. But in his room, and I don't really do inspections for him, we used to go into his room all the time because of this thing. Well, it got to the point where I had I had a roach infestation that just kept coming up because of the way he was living. So in the
Mm-hmm.
end, I'm like, okay, am I really helping this guy out? Is he really being helped out here? Because he's living in filth. He's living in filth. And I have to believe him that he wouldn't be living in filth if he was at the shelter,
Right. Yeah.
right? And so I tell you, it broke my heart to have him leave, because but it came to a point where no, man, I can't do this anymore. And
Right.
yeah, so all kinds of different folks here, but about 80% of the people that come here end up on their feet and become members of a community and so forth. So yeah.
Wow. So as you're moving forward, kind of what is your goals moving forward? Are you looking? Do you want to become a nonprofit? Do you want to stay the way it is? Or are you looking at investing in more properties? Are you trying to get other people on your team to invest in properties? Anything of that nature?
So everything's on the table. So
Okay.
nothing's off the table. I have had people approach me way back when I first got started, even just in the concept part of it. People are like, And I've got kind of nerdy in my numbers. So I've got all the numbers laid out and in concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, that'll work. That will do what it needs to do from a business standpoint. And, from a mission standpoint, that would be a great nonprofit. Uh, my idea was, okay, there are so many different options out there, right? And this is developed. This isn't something that I knew right off the bat. So what separates us, and we don't have to be separate. Well, what separates us from a shelter, or what separates us from a halfway home, or what separates us from just an apartment, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've, I've again always learning, but the idea that we can have individuals gradually get themselves to where they need to go. I think I mentioned this to you before. In my mind, of course, there's details there that aren't the same, but in my mind, when we used to recover our POWs, a long time ago, we do a news press. Hey, we got them back, whichever way we got them back, and everybody's happy, and there's ticker tape and all the great stuff, and next thing you know, they're back with their family and they're not doing well,
Right.
because you can't go from living in a hole, literally, to back with your family.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and you don't necessarily need to be, it's not a punishment, but you don't need to be under the rigors of something as like a halfway home, maybe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what do we have? We have a place where your success is really up to you, as it is in most places, halfway homes as well. But really, there's no curfew, there's no that kind of thing. You need to be able to do it. Well, what if you don't do it? Well, then you're back out on the street. It's up to you. There's no a nonprofit, or not nonprofit, but maybe a different program. It'd be like 3 strikes, you're out, blah blah blah, whatever it might be. This is like, hey, you break that lease, I'm a landlord. You got to go. So
Right.
I'm passionate about what we do, but I'm also compassionate about the other people that are here.
Mm-hmm.
So do I have one guy jack it up for everybody? No, it's not going to happen. But I'm going to be as fair as I can be, right? So understanding, okay, so now I've kind of got a pretty good feel like how we are part of the fabric of the support for needy veterans, right? So okay, that's where we are. Now I'm like, okay, how do I how do I have this sustain itself? Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So when the people came to me, like I was saying before, to say, hey, you could be a nonprofit. This is such a great idea. Your numbers work. But I didn't understand the need. I didn't understand our veterans, and I'm still learning, right? So how am I going to be like, yeah, this is a great idea. Let's do it. I'm going to be, but I don't have I don't have the understanding, right? And maybe
Mm-hmm.
I needing to understand it more than what really needs to be understood. But that's okay, because that's always been the way that I do what I do, right?
Right.
When I was a mass sergeant and doing things, and then other people come and go, Master Sergeant, why are you doing that? You don't need to be doing that. In other words, get somebody else to do that. I got you. And I do intend on having somebody else do it. But until I understand this to the level where I can best be supported and support, I'm going to be in here doing it.
Right. Yeah. That's
so,
good.
so these stripes, they don't mean too much. It's like, well, you're making the other senior NCOs look bad because you're doing this work. I'm like, you worry about you, and you worry about what you need to do, and I get you. I understand what you're saying, but
Mm-hmm.
I need to know it to a place where I'm not being snowed. I guess that's one of the things, right? We know what snowed means, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Because you want to be sympathetic to what your guys are saying, but at the same time, you're like, no, I don't work that way. How do you know it don't work that way? Because I just came out of there. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Exactly.
So that's part of the lessons that I learned when I was in the military, was to get in there and know it well enough, right? But at the same time, you have to understand that no no man is an island to himself, right? So you have to be able to step away. So that's where I am right now. I'm learning and figuring out how I can step away and have Heroes Haven be self-sustainable, right?
Right.
Because right now I put everything I've got into it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So how do I do that? How do I because I know that it's it is sustainable for me to do this, but it's unrealistic for me to live, the way that I'm living indefinitely. Right.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I see that. I mean, I absolutely love what you got going on there, and I think it's a fantastic thing. I think you can do it without being a nonprofit. I think the way you are doing it, it lends itself more to not being a nonprofit. And I imagine that there are things that you need within the homes or those types of things where you're getting people from that are homeless coming in. They don't have a lot of stuff, so I like, where are you getting those types of things? Are you looking for donations? Are you looking for, whether it's material or whether it's money, what are you looking at for that specifically?
Yes.
Okay, all of the above, I got
Air
it.
Force guy, you got to give me multiple choice. You take our test, it's multiple choice. All of the above. No,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. So when I first got started, I was like, okay, you know what? I'll slowly furnish the units. I'll slowly do this. I'll do that, whatever it might be. I was kind of almost at like an Airbnb type idea, but then I realized, well, between AC units that go out, roofs that need to be repaired, all these other things, there really isn't anything left for those other things. And like, it sounds silly, but I don't know if it sounds silly, but landscaping, for example, right?
Right. Yeah.
Um, we don't have any broken windows, but it's the broken window effect is if people come into an environment where it doesn't look, it doesn't, I'm not saying nice, but it looks, reasonably good, then there isn't as much pride in where you live.
Yeah, that's very true.
And so that is something that I'm looking for support in really doing those type of things. Emergency funds for whatever it is that comes up. I had to put in a new roof in the property in El Paso, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge. Um, it's a good thing this new thing called intermittent fasting has come up because now I don't have to eat so much. I'm like, well, I'm not I'm not struggling with money here. I'm just applying intermittent fasting. It allows me not to have to eat all. You don't have to eat every day. Is that what you do?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it
so
came up at a good time, I suppose.
yeah, absolutely. Like, it must have been a broke real estate investor type that came up with that. It's like, do I put in a
Had to have
new yeah, put in a new refrigerator, or do I need to eat every day? Probably.
been.
So,
That's good. Okay, so if there's somebody out there that wants to invest, that wants to help you out, and those types of things, what is the best way that they can get in contact with you specifically?
well, right now, actually, just before this doesn't really answer your question, and I'll get to that here in a second. Right, just before I came in here, I was out talking to one of my veterans. I call them my veterans,
Mhm.
who's the guy who actually designed this logo for me. I don't know if you can
Okay.
see it,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
he's a graphics guy and he does a whole bunch of different stuff. And I went out to throw the trash real quick, and then I ran into him, and that's always a great conversation talking to him. And I almost lost track of time because I said, I need to develop a web page. And I went through the kind of like the way I looked at web pages was is has evolved. My initial outlook on web pages and social media was how do I I'm a property investor. How do I get more tenants? Well, the need is so high to house veterans that most of my veterans, you know, 99% of them come through the nonprofits, and sometimes I have to turn them away because I'm at capacity, right?
Right.
So I didn't look at web pages or social media as being like a necessity because I had tenants. Um, but now I'm like, and actually initial conversation with you has me rethinking social media and web pages, because then I can inevitably, when I go out to talk to people, or just sitting around somewhere and somebody will ask me what I do and I tell them, and they want to help. I don't have an avenue for people to help me. I have my contact information. I have those type of things, but I need to structure myself in a way. And if I can get the help, which is talking to my tenant on how to develop those things, how to develop the web page so that it can be incredibly informative, and also where we can share some of these success stories, because I share the success stories. I started doing this with the case managers, because the case managers for my vets, it seems like they only get bad news, right?
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
that's all they hear. And I'm like, you know what? I need to start sharing these success stories with the case managers, because they have so many cases, they have so many individuals, and sometimes people are like, well, my case manager isn't doing what they need to do. Do you realize they have like 50, they have 70 cases out there? You need
Absolutely.
to be able to help yourself so that they can help you. And sometimes I think those folks get beat down so hard. And is it, yeah, you could have done a better job, and they know that they
Hmm.
could have done a better job, but it's just such a challenge, so huge,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
amount of people. And so everybody from the finance folks at the nonprofits, you're like, well, why would you share that with them? Because they're part of the recipe, right? Part of the solution.
Hmm.
So I send those stories out. So again, the conversation that you and I were having, I'm like, well, I have my social media, Facebook, Instagram, and I post tons of stuff on there. But that's me, that's Daniel Cano. I I want to get to a place where it's Heroes Haven, and Daniel Cano is just kind of on the side. It's not really
Yeah.
the focus is what's happening with Heroes Haven, and being able to post, the success stories as well as some of the challenges, because I think we learn from those challenges, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I was out there talking to him, and then I was getting all geared up and all just, all excited about whatever. He's all excited. He's like, yeah, and you could just see him, like I said, high tech, low tech, no tech, but he's a high tech guy. So in his mind, it's just like this, that, bring this over here, take this over there. It's kind of like, with and he's a younger guy too, so he he kind of grew up with it. So that's what I'm looking to do, is to establish a platform where individuals can get insight into the condition of homelessness. And it's not like, well, there's homeless and there's always been homeless, there always will be homeless. Okay, but what happened to the homeless that we helped, right?
Hmm.
And when I say help, I'm not doing it on my own. I'm part of a bigger grouping, if you will, I'm not a nonprofit, but nonprofits and other individuals. So so if you were to look at the webbing of who's out there providing support, you go, well, you're not a nonprofit, you're just citizen such and such. Maybe you're a vet, maybe you're not. How do you support? How do you, and they come to you, Daniel, how do I support? Tell me what you need from me. And that's the part that I really need to nail down this year, is to is to give individuals a place where they can support.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think once you do that, man, the sky's the limit. And I think that there are plenty of individuals out there that veterans themselves that are doing well, and they want to give back, and they want to be able to support other veteran organizations and things. And I think where you're at and what you're doing specifically is fantastic. It's a great way for people to be able to help. And from what I'm seeing, I mean, it's a positive thing. In every direction, you're helping the nonprofits, you're helping the VA, you're helping everybody over there. And being a veteran yourself, it just makes it that much better. And I think it's a great platform for a great example for other veterans. Like if somebody's out there and they want to do the same type of thing, I mean, that is definitely a thing. I mean, it'd be great to see that in all the cities around the country.
And
Um,
and there's a mentor of mine back when I was in working for the government in Miami. He mentioned something to me. I'm not going to get it exactly right, but he said that and he said that I was already doing this, but he was just kind of laying it out, is like how I'm asking for something, like I'm asking for whatever it might be. What's the mutual benefit,
mm-hmm,
right? It's like people will do whatever it is that they want to do, but if they're going to stay focused and committed to it, there's got to be some type of benefit. It can't just be a warm fuzzy, even though that's great and that's awesome. What's the mutual benefit? And so he probably thought I wasn't paying attention, but I was. So when I go and I look and I work with people and organizations, I'm like, okay, what's the mutual benefit here? It can't just be one-sided. And so, as an example, and this is me just throwing out there because I had this thought, and I'm just kind of like, okay, let's look at how different people want to help, right?
mm-hmm,
And what is it that would come easy to them to help, and yet there would be a benefit to them? Let me give you an example. I haven't executed on this, I haven't made any phone calls, but it's something that I've been working in my mind because I have a buddy of mine who owns a moving company.
mm-hmm.
He's in the Dallas area. So you own a moving company, you move people, right? Inevitably, there's going to be a piece of furniture that they don't want,
Right. Yeah.
and they don't want to get rid of it. They're like, "Well, you're here. Can you just take it away?" Right? Can you just take can I like look and there it is, and then when I look back, it's not there, right? And it's
Right.
a great piece of furniture they got from blah blah blah, but it needs a little bit of work or whatever it might be, and it's good furniture though. But they've got a new place. And maybe the lady of the house is like, I don't want that. I want something else. What happens to that furniture? My friend is like, I, I don't know what to do with this furniture. I could take it and probably sell it on eBay or do something like that, but he's got all his energies in his moving company. He doesn't
Right.
have the energies and the resources to do that. I'm like, man, that's an interesting thing that you just said to me, because if we can figure out a way to tap into that, I've got a individuals like people, right, that are
Mm-hmm.
moving that can donate to Heroes Haven, good furniture. Now they get that, hey, my furniture is going to a good thing, right? The mover can move the furniture to where I need it, and he doesn't do it for free, I'll pay for it to be moved. So now
Right.
there's a benefit to him there. And he knows that he's part of stuff that's happening where he's supporting veterans. And we get furniture that can be used within the properties.
Yeah.
Where's the downside there, right? It's like, well, why isn't everybody doing this? Well, I don't know. It's going to take something in that secret sauce, that little element, that little part to kind of do that. And so, as an example, that's all in theory in my mind that it would work. And so, the only reason we haven't really done it with him and his moving company is because he's up in Dallas. And if
Right.
we
Yeah.
do that, how to get that furniture from there to here now it needs to go into storage. Now it may become a little too logistically beyond where there's a benefit. If we were um, more established and had more funds, then maybe we could do something where we could have a storage for that type of thing. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great thing. Veterans already, being in the military, you got to wheel and deal, and you got to do those types of things anyways.
Right.
So I see that only as a win-win. Look around the veteran community. I mean, hey, if I can scratch your back and you can scratch my back, we're both winning. So I think that's a great way to look at trying to do those things.
Right, right. And yeah, winning is defined differently for different people. Some people willing is just winning is participating. Some people is like, what's the end result? Some people, there's a whole bunch of different things out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're gonna shoot me, but I think we're
Yeah, go
running out
ahead.
of battery here on my
Oh, okay.
laptop. So
Well, we can wrap it up. Hey, I appreciate you for coming on. I do want to have you on eventually on one of my veteran stories. I'd like to hear your whole story, from start to finish.
sure.
But this organization that you got going on is fantastic for anybody out there. If you're interested in it, I'll put Daniel's contact info on, and I'll even put it on the website as well. But it's a great organization, something that benefits and helps those veterans out. He's not a nonprofit, but by God, whatever money and whatever things you can push his way, it's going to go to a great cause. So I encourage everybody to help Daniel out and what he's got going on. And if you're interested in it and it's something that you would like to do in another city, something like that, reach out to him as well. He'll be able to point you in the right direction and give you some great advice. Before we take off, Daniel, is there anything you'd like to say to everybody?
No, I mean, thank you so much. I just want to say thank you, and to all of the people out there that support our mission. It's just, it's so heartwarming to see so many people that are looking to support, and I get the calls all the time, and I'm just so blessed and so thankful for the opportunity. And thank you, Andrew, for giving us an opportunity to share our story and what's going on. And I know that we're going to do a lot of great things for a lot of great people. In my mission statement, it says the blessings of tomorrow walk through this door. So they get here needing help, but they leave providing help. And I think that's key. Again, force multiplier. And it happens with individuals like yourself. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Hey, well, I thank you. Thanks for coming on. For all the listeners out there, thanks for tuning in. It's awesome that we get to provide some things like this for everyone to see and getting veteran voices out. If you're struggling, you're having a hard time, you're thinking about hurting yourself or anything like that, VA has a great website, veteranscrisisline.net. You can go to that and they have a chat icon. All you gotta do is click on that. You can chat online if you're one of those guys that like to do that. You can also text 838-255. Same type of deal. It's all anonymous. You say whatever it is that you feel like saying, and they'll be there to help you. You can also dial 988 and press option 1. And they'll be able to put you in contact with somebody and move you where you need and get you the help that you need. One veteran's life loss is one too many. So be sure to reach out. I care about you. I know Daniel cares about you. All the veterans care about you. You are important to us. So please get the help that you need. And with that, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you on another episode. Stay motivated, change your socks.